From chemical plant explosions to the worst oil spills in history, stay tuned to number 1 to find out the worst man-made disasters to ever plague planet Earth. Number 10. Agent Orange in the Vietnam War. War is never a good thing, especially when it's in the deep jungle. How do you attack the enemy when you can't even see them? Well, in the 1970s during the Vietnam War, the US troops figured out a new way to handle the problem. Just destroy the jungle with chemicals. Commonly known as Agent Orange, government scientists came up with a mix of chemicals that could be sprayed onto plant life and would basically disintegrate the forest in a matter of hours. Unfortunately, this stuff was sprayed not only on the jungles of the battlefield, but also onto the rice crops around the countryside, killing off a major food supply for the Vietnamese people. Even worse than all of this is the long-term effects of the decision. Apparently, spraying Agent Orange over the crops killed the land's ability to ever grow back crops in the future. This purposeful move of ecocide in the 1970s definitely qualifies as a man-made disaster. Number 9. Mass mercury poisoning in Japan. You would hope that companies would know what kind of waste they are pouring into the water. You would also hope that if they knew it was bad for the environment, that the people would instantly stop pouring. You would also think that the government would step in and regulate these kinds of actions. In Japan, however, none of the above occurred, and it led to mass mercury poisoning. The Chiso Corporation ran a chemical factory in Kumamoto, Japan for decades. Like all factories, they had plenty of waste to get rid of, and like most companies, they threw it into the river. They didn't care much that some of the waste was pure mercury, known to poison anyone and anything that comes in regular contact with it. They also didn't care much about doing this for over 30 years. Soon enough, the marine life of the area absorbed the mercury, and then the people that were eating the sea life were exposed to deadly amounts of mercury. Decades later, the government of Japan determined that over 2,200 people were affected by Minamata disease from the mercury exposure, and over 1,700 died from the disease. Number 8. The Chernobyl nuclear explosion. Nuclear power is insanely powerful, whether it's being used to power electricity or being used to bomb countries. Creating the power is also insanely delicate and must be done perfectly. Any minor problem can result in a huge explosion or a radiation leak, which is what happened in Chernobyl in the 1980s. But before we talk more about Chernobyl, I'm sure you know what we're going to ask. Please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to Zero to Hero. The Chernobyl power plant in the Ukraine performed a safety test in April 1986, but the tests were not performed properly. In addition to this, the reactor itself was not built properly. Put this together along with an overabundance of steam locked inside the reactor, and boom! You end up with a world-famous nuclear meltdown that is forever used in the argument against nuclear power. After the fire was put out and the radiation leak had ended, official reports state that only 2 people died at the plant. However, another 29 died directly due to the blast, and another 15 died indirectly related to the meltdown. In addition, over 100 employees went to the hospital with acute radiation sickness. Beyond all of this, most of the land within miles of the Chernobyl incident are still considered uninhabitable to this day. At least their mistakes created cheap real estate, I suppose. Number 7. The North Pacific Garbage Patch. We all know that some garbage ends up in the ocean. After all, we learned as kids to cut up soda rings and never asked why they end up in the ocean in the first place. As it turns out, there's a lot of garbage in the ocean. Like tons. Like multiple island-sized patches, the largest one being in the North Pacific. Located halfway between Hawaii and mainland US, the North Pacific Garbage Patch has been forming for decades, consisting of an estimated 1.8 trillion, that's right, trillion with a T, pieces of plastic. The garbage patch is approximately 1.6 million square miles in size. That's twice the size of Texas and 3 times the size of France. As if this isn't bad enough, there are at least 4 other gigantic garbage patches out there, one in every major ocean on the planet. This may seem like a literal faraway issue, but when marine life digs into the garbage instead of their regular food, and the garbage affects their living area, the butterfly effect kicks in, and this can lead to all kinds of problems for mankind. And if this wasn't all fun enough, the piles are getting bigger and bigger every day, and there are no plans in place to fix it. Number 6. The Seveso disaster, Italy. Exposing the public to any kind of toxin is a bad idea. While companies usually don't do it on purpose, industrial accidents still happen, and a big one hit Italy in 1976. A small chemical plant in Milan, Italy found itself in the news for all the wrong reasons in 1976. When producing chemicals for industrial use, the staff had to be careful to make the reactions happen at a very precise temperature. Unfortunately, mistakes occurred and the temperature was way too hot for the chemical reactions. In addition, a reactor valve used to relieve the pressure in the structure failed to open on time. Once it finally did, instead of slowly releasing a safe amount of toxins, it blasted out 6 tons of chemicals into the sky. The aftermath was terrible. Luckily, no people died, but over 3,300 animals were found dead in the nearby region soon after. The government stepped in and realized that other animals, including ones at food processing plants, would be at risk. So, 80,000 animals were put down in hopes of keeping the toxins out of the food supply. Not exactly good advertising for your company. Number 5. The sewage of Niagara Falls. Toxic waste sucks, but every major factory produces it and needs to dispose of it. But how? There are many ways to dispose of waste, but one that is very frowned upon in modern day is exactly what was done decades ago near the Love Canal neighborhood in Niagara Falls. In the 1940s and 50s, a chemical plant created tons of toxic waste, so much that they simply poured it onto the ground at the edge of town. Decades later, the city then built neighborhoods right on top of these former sludge heaps. By the late 70s, the fallout began. Terrible smells, dead grass, and toxic sludge emerging from the ground were just a few of the issues experienced by the residents. Soon after, the town was evacuated, and there was no reasonable way to clean up the mess. Years later, however, the city of Niagara Falls says the neighborhood is now safe enough for people to move back in. Again, at least the real estate will be cheap. Number 4. The Jilin chemical explosion. More chemical plants. The first rule of all chemical plants should be to prepare for emergencies. Regrettably, that rule isn't always in place, or when the time comes, things just don't work out. Such was the case in the Jilin chemical explosion in China. A chemical plant in Jilin, China was operating just fine until one day one of their relief valves got jammed. With no way out, the heated chemicals had no way of escaping, and it caused a massive explosion inside the building. Reports state the windows were shattered over 650 feet away from the blast, killing 6 employees and injuring dozens more. And the problem spread from there. Over 10,000 people had to be evacuated from the small towns nearby, and over 100 tons of pollution went flowing down the Songhua River, affecting many more towns and villages. This is why "be prepared" is such a good phrase to live by. Number 3. The Exxon Valdez oil spill. Shipping oil is always a delicate task, and the Exxon Corporation found that out the hard way in 1989. With an overworked crew and lax care taken for safety measures, the Exxon Valdez oil spill became the worst spill in world history at the time. In March of 1989, while shipping oil from the north down to the mainland US, an oil tanker lost control and hit land off the coast of Alaska. The hit was so severe that it cracked the ship open and caused over 10 million gallons of oil to spill out, devastating the coastline and sea. As if that wasn't bad enough, the shipwreck occurred in Alaska, which is not exactly the easiest place for first responders and cleanup crews to arrive and save the day in an instant. And the problems didn't stop there. The oil spread to over 11,000 square miles of ocean, and seeing as this region of Alaska was very popular for seafood fishing for mainland US, the food supply took a huge hit. Well, at least something that terrible never happened again. Oh, wait. Number 2. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Just when we thought the record-setting oil spills were done, we have another. In April of 2010, an explosion rocked the Deepwater Horizon oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico. The explosion killed 11, injured 17, and severed the connection between the rig and the oil flow. This means that there was a massive, open hole in the bottom of the Gulf pouring out oil and no way to stop it. And it took forever to cap the flow. Crews tried many different techniques to get to the opening and seal the pipe, but with no luck. As gallons upon gallons of oil kept pouring out into the Gulf, after 4 long months, crews were finally able to cap the pipe and stop most of the oil flow, but not after 210 million gallons of crude oil had escaped into the water. Naturally, the effects were devastating. Sea life died off for many years before slowly returning. Beaches throughout the Gulf were too dirty to enjoy, and of course, an oil spill record was set that will hopefully never come close to being matched. Number 1. The Great Smog of London. Nobody likes smog. It smells bad, it looks bad, and it's bad for your lungs. But it's not every day that it kills off scores of people. Unfortunately, that's exactly what occurred in London in 1952. From December 5th to December 9th of 1952, London experienced a perfect storm, kinda. At the time, coal was big business, so there was tons of ash in the air from the factories and the homes burning coal for power and heat. Usually, the wind would carry away most of the smog, but for 5 days there wasn't a trace of wind. Combine this with the cold weather stagnating the air even more, and you have the perfect recipe for disaster. A giant smog cloud that's not going anywhere. The smog was so thick that people had trouble walking through the cloud to go to work, let alone drive. The smog penetrated houses, forcing everyone in London to inhale the deadly ash. In the end, over 100,000 people fell ill and another 12,000 people died from the event. A few years later, England passed new environmental laws in hopes of avoiding future issues by reducing pollution wherever possible. At least something good came out of all this. Let us know what you think about these disasters in the comments below, and take care.